Okay, the reason we got you on was to talk about the cricketers, the Australian cricketers taking a Black Lives Matter protest, if you like, a barefoot protest at the start of this summer's one-day cricket season. You don't support this protest? In fact, you'd like to see them not partake?
Well, I think the danger with some of this stuff is that it's almost the danger of the unknown. What we've seen is sort of a positive affirmation that the cricketers and presumably Cricket Australia will get involved and support this organisation. And I think Pat Cummins said that the more you learn about this movement, the more it becomes a no-brainer, or words to that effect. But the truth is, the more you learn about the organisation BLM, the more you should be running away in the opposite direction. I mean, this is an organisation that has its roots in radical neo-Marxist thought. Until very recently, on their website, they had their what we believe in manifesto, if you like, and it contained such gems as disrupting the Western nuclear family and things of this nature. Now, I think the difficulty here is that the language that's used by some of these leftist organisations is very clever, because as we've spoken about at length in the last 6 months, the concept and the affirmation that Black Lives Matter is of course a very real one. But the truth of the matter is you need to dig deeper, and these are the sorts of things that kids who are watching their heroes play are getting sort of forced down their throat by decisions like this. And I'm not a fan of that. In fact, I'm not a fan of sport and politics sharing the same room. I've heard it said that in the court of public opinion there should be a restraining order between sport and politics. They need to be 500 metres apart at all time. People play sport and watch sport to unify and as a form of escapism more than anything, and I don't think this is helpful, and I don't think that it's warranted, quite frankly.
Look, I think your point about the organisation Black Lives Matter is a strong one. There's a lot of a radical leftist agenda involved in that, a lot of radical anarchists as well. Perhaps so that's what the cricketers are trying to avoid. Instead of taking the knee, going for this barefoot protest, more of a nod to our Indigenous compatriots.
Yeah, which is all fine, of course, but the reality is they are endorsing BLM. And, I think this is a sort of a strange cultural shift over the last probably 5 to 10 years, where sport and politics, sport and Hollywood, Hollywood and politics have all become, sort of unanimous. And I think it's time that people started voting with their feet, telling Cricket Australia and, the AFL and other organisations that they just want to be entertained. The reality is that people don't want to get their escapism and have politics forced down their throat. I think it's time the Australian people spoke about this. It's probably time the Australian people released the Kraken on politics and sport joining to the hip.
Yeah, I think the other point is that it is virtue signalling. It doesn't do anything concrete to help people disadvantaged in this community, and that was something picked up by our friend and the Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs, Jacinta Price, on Paul Murray last night. Have a listen.
The woke brown person says jump, and everyone's got to say, okay, how high? What is this going to do for Aboriginal people? Absolutely zero. I'll tell you what it'll do for the cricketers, though. Make them look utterly ridiculous as they stand there pretending to be woke and all virtuous, but knowing deep inside that they too are probably dying slightly and cringing themselves.
Really strong opinion there from a leading Indigenous voice. Of course, there are other Indigenous activists supporting this move. But I think, Senator Antic, one of the issues here is, do you think that the cricketers and various sporting organisations have their hand forced? They actually have to bow to these sorts of pressure groups. Otherwise, they'll be the victims of social media campaigns and worse to shame them into taking some sort of action.
Well, look, it's a very good point you make, and I don't know. I don't know the insides and outs of what's actually taken place here, but certainly across the board we are seeing pressure on sporting organisations, on corporations to adopt this line, and I think it's very foolish. I mean, we saw what happened a while back with Gillette and their toxic masculinity campaign. It ended up costing them billions. And we're now seeing reports that the NFL in the US is down 20% of its viewership since 2016. ESPN's down almost 2 million subscribers a year, it would seem. And even the NBA last year apparently had the lowest ratings in its final season that it's had for a while. This is the fate that awaits corporations and sporting organisations that get woke. They go broke.